everyone. Welcome back to another Loom Press podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest with us. We have Nathan McCartney, who is one half of the spoken word music group Dusk Til Chorus. So, Nate, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Lee. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah. So you're one half of the, as I said, Dusk Til Chorus. So Dusk Til Chorus, where did that come from?
It's a whole that's actually a not very interesting but long story, so I'll shorten it. But um it's been the same two of us pretty much since the start, and we've had other people in the band throughout the years and added people on and people, drift away and all sorts of things, but we really sort of put a stop to doing, music and doing this project full time, maybe like 2014, but 11 years ago. We were both had young kids, and we thought we'll just put it on pause for now. And we've got to the stage now we're a little older, but back in the day, the band was called Dramatic Tiger Club, which doesn't have a background name to it. It's a background story, I'm saying. And we shortened that to DTC, when we sort of started playing together again recently. But I wanted to lengthen it out again, and part of the process that we go through is really taking the poetry and the words that I create, and having those be the focal point of the piece, but still having some sort of hook in there in the chorus, something that sort of keeps people listening. That's the plan at least. So that's where the Dusk Till Chorus part came from, but really it came from that DTC acronym originally.
That is actually interesting. Yeah, there's kind of because Dramatic Tiger Club. That sounds crazy. That's like Wu-Tang Clan. It's like yeah.
It sounds a lot more crazy than it was. And I did drama at university. That was what I chose to study. I was accepted into economics, and last minute decided I'm going to do drama instead.
Very good.
That's just the way life goes. But it all, this with poetry and with music, and this is why economics was something that called to me a little bit. It is all maths, and the most accessible music and the most accessible poetry, follows quite a mathematical structure, and really it becomes interesting when you stray away from that and become a little more, take
Yeah,
a little more advanced maths into that, and then throw some things about there.
very good. Very good. So it's yourself and Niall O'Doherty.
That's right, Jim.
Have you always been you mentioned different band members coming in and going. Have you two always been the constants
We're
throughout?
the only constants, yeah. So, I'm the spoken word part of it. But Niall's kind of a funny one as well. He did audio engineering, and went to university for music, and maybe around when Game of Thrones started filming in Northern Ireland mainly,
Hmm.
he changed his course entirely and he became a special effects guy. So the practical effects, as opposed to computer effects. And that's what he's been doing ever since. He's 10 years strong. He's doing really well, really, really well with that, and really enjoying it. And he works on a load of stuff. He's always out working on different films and different TV shows. But when he's not working, he's back. We're in the studio. We're doing things together. We have our own little podcast as well, just for fun. But we really put a lot of effort into the musical project. We've kind of been building for quite a few years, and we have some stuff that we're recycling from before, and reimagining in some way. But quite a big part of this is to release things that people haven't heard from us before, and get sort of a lot of the stuff that we've been writing, whether it's musically or lyrically, either or, out to the general public that we want to hear, people want to hear. And we want people to hear more than anything else, especially for me, as I said to you earlier, in email, we did stop that project, but when you've got bitten by that creative bug, you never really stop writing, you never really stop thinking, you never really stop, creating. The notes app on my phone, just because it's handy, is filled. It's absolutely chock a block of just one line, two lines, an idea, And sometimes I'll flesh that out, and sometimes it just sits there, and I just had to get it out of my head. It's not necessarily something I'm going to build on. Um, but yeah, like that writing process for me is funny. When I was a kid, I loved, like, I'm talking like 7 or 8. I used to love writing poems. You learn it in school. it's something new and fun, at least to some people, at least, And wordplay for me is like the highest level of, fun to do, fun to enjoy, fun to listen to, I really enjoy good wordplay, and you can find that in pockets of, popular music and some other parts as well, where there's actually just a hidden really good lyricist in there somewhere. But in Ireland specifically, like Christy Moore is a great example of somebody who, and obviously he doesn't write all of them, all the songs he plays, but even the songs he does write himself, and some of the other ones, it reeks through some of that really beautiful analogies, some really beautiful, metaphors, and what comes through there, and it feels almost like, from an Irish perspective, when obviously English isn't our native language, but we're the best at making fun of
Oh, sure. Well, you're based in Donegal, and I know that reminds me of recently, because I noticed in Donegal everyone says sir, everyone calls everyone sir,
Yeah.
and I was like, where did that come from? And apparently, it's you probably know is the when it was English colonizing Ireland. I don't know, the redcoats would go around and try
Yeah.
and make the Irish say address them as sir. So what the Irish made everyone sir then, and then no one
Yeah.
is therefore no one's a sir. So whole irony there.
I always find the good loophole, especially in language, and that's the fun part. Ireland's always been, a real champion of language, realistic of the English language, never mind the Irish language, and when it comes to poetry and when it comes to any sort of writing, any sort of orating as well, there's quite so much there in the history. And you know, when I was in university, I went back in time and looking at like poetry in ancient Ireland. Obviously, it was nothing to do with what I was studying. It was just I had access to now the library. And we talk about back in ancient Ireland, the poet was a regal member of society, and people would be put to trial, and their punishment was to be given pretty much a diss track from the poet.
That's
And then it would ruin their whole life, because everybody would slag them off about it forever.
It's true. Yeah, it's the Philly of long ago, definitely.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, talking about the past, I suppose we will talk about the projects you're working on now, but I want to
Of
go
course.
pre 2015. You said so you were performing widely, you were going, you were at festivals, things like that.
Mhm.
Tell us a bit about that time and kind of
Of
what
course,
led
yeah.
then you to sort of going on your hiatus.
Well,
Uh,
it was a few different things that sort of came together at once. I'd started doing this, and I'll go back a little further. I've always loved writing. I've always loved, creating, with words especially, and playing with words and doing the things that I talk about. Um, but I was never a very good singer, and I've always loved being on the stage. I did faces as a kid, and all those sorts of things. But I love being on stage, and there really isn't a great market in this time, for just being on stage as a poet. Depending on what you're doing, obviously, and what's appealing. And even to this day, I abhor playing certain venues and bars, with the music that I'm creating here because nobody's listening. They're not listening to what's going on, and that's not their fault. They're not there to listen. I'm not blaming anybody for being in that category, but what I really want is somebody to have a captive audience, and that's why festivals were great. But I wasn't a great singer. I wanted to get that my works out there. I wanted to have that sort of spotlight. And I've worked a long time on my voice, so to speak, and how I say these things out loud, and especially when I pair them with music and so on and so forth. But it was my dad growing up really liked Ian Dury. Ian Dury and the Blockheads is a London-based poet. And when I got a little older and I was reading about his biography, reading about his life, and one of the big things for him was that, you know, he was just doing stupid poems and having a bit of fun. He was physically disabled as well, but he really wanted to be a frontman in a band, and he ended up, by pure happenstance and chance being the frontman of Danger and the Blockheads. And, I'm a musician as well. I play a few instruments, but like the Blockheads were one of the one of the best bands of all time. Unreal, in terms of like musically and tight and how great they were creating together. And just for Danger to have shown up and got in on that was amazing, just pure luck. But you know, really going through that process and listening to some other people and being like, okay, I can still do this without singing. I can still put these things out here. I can forget about choruses and hooks and having to figure something out that keeps people going, from my own perspective. Um, and really make the focal point the words because that's what it was, for them. But so I started doing that on my own. Niall joined in with me then very, very early on. And really helped a lot on the musical side because I play for instruments, but and I enjoy creating music, but I don't have any idea about so many things. No, he keeps me grounded. We can and can't do, so to speak. But we started playing. We added a couple of members to the band. We played a couple of festivals. In fact, because it really is. It's not exactly a captive audience, but when you're playing at a festival, people can just leave and go to another part. They don't have to stay and watch, and the people that stay are the people you're playing to, and I really feel that.
Yeah.
Um, but after we did the first couple, um, I started working with another couple of musicians that incredible musicians, unbelievable. Guy called Liam, Dominic, and Jay Dixon. Those three, Dominic O'Callaghan and Liam Craig. Unbelievable musicians. Really great guys. And we played a couple of festivals and gigs together. And that was now at this point a 6/7 piece band, depending on who was all joining us on the stage. Um, which really, in hindsight, that was the injury influencing me of wanting to really create this big, big, beautiful sound of big, beautiful, incredible musicians working together, and they were great together. Um, but when there's that many people and it's that sort of project, it starts to become quite hard to manage. It's quite hard to pin people down to dates to do this, that, and the other, as well as having young kids and everything else. And really, we made it too big for us to really continue with it at the minute. Over the years, me and I are quite good friends. We've always been in touch. We've always been hanging out together and doing things together. And sometimes we just go and create some music that never goes anywhere just for fun. But really it was, in the last couple of years, I've been really getting the itch back of, I've been writing a lot more structured, and back to how I felt. I was a lot more inspired than I had been. We set up a studio. Niall did mainly again, where we're able to sit down and make these things and create them and have them done there and then, as opposed to doing little pockets here and there, setting up the home studio and putting it away again, and all the trappings that come with that when you're trying to do something, when you have a slight inconvenience that you're not going to do it anymore. But that's really how it came about back around, and what happened at the start as well there.
Very good. Very good. So about a year ago, you came out with Bad Breaks, and that marked
Yes.
maybe the return then of I suppose you mentioned this creative itch. Um,
Exactly that. And Bad Breaks was one of our recycled songs. They say we that's an older one. Um, it got quite quote unquote popular. People quite enjoyed it, but part of what we didn't like about the previous recordings, the dramatic fire stuff, club stuff, in hindsight, not at the time, but was that we had sort of created almost too accessible a sound. I know it sounds very hipster or whatever, but it was the juxtaposition of what was happening lyrically and with the spoken word aspect of it wasn't vibing as well as I thought it was at the time. And we really wanted to strip all that back and really focus on what's actually happening with the words and having some interesting music behind it and having something that's still accessible, but just that little bit less poppy, so to speak.
yeah, yeah. So that's where Adequate comes in.
It's where Attica comes in.
Good. Yeah, no, I
So,
mean, so go on,
go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
No, I
No,
was just gonna say with Adequate, that's one I've been working on for 8 years, I want to say. It's never been released before. The version you hear now is quite close to the original version that I made in terms of structurally at least, and the lyrics, and like my process is very all or nothing. It's very night before an exam situation where as soon as I got that first line of a poem, and I have a vision for where I want to go. It's 20 minutes and I'm done with the majority of the bones of the first draft. I just blitz it out. And if I think too much, then I make it. I always think that I've overthought it and scrap it. But empty it on a page in one go, and it just keeps coming and flowing. That's when I know I've got something that I want to continue on with. But with Adequate, I did that and went a step further, and that I had a little iPad mini, this little tiny guy, back in the days. And I wrote the whole song, went onto GarageBand on the iPad mini, and like, you know, with the little on-screen keyboard on the, with three fingers doing the chords and stuff, and recorded, the majority of not what it sounds like now, obviously, and there's a lot more that's gone into it, and I just put a lot of effort into making that so much better. But those like bass chords and that sort of flow and structure is something that I like did all at once in like an hour or 2 hours, just really, really went for it. Um, but that's the thing is that for me in every creative project I've ever done is that I either do it all now or I'm not going to do it at all. You know?
But even with you're talking about like kind of stripping it back, even when you watch like the video for Adequate compared to say Bad Breaks, it's raw and it's intimate. Like you're literally watching yourself and Niall working on it there, and it's as
Yeah.
if it's just happening. It's like it's in the womb, but like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
you know. So it is good. So is am I right in saying that Adequate is the first track of this album you're working on with Niall?
Correct, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's the first track of this new album that's coming out now. So we have another track that comes out September 2nd. That's the updated, more updated than what we hear now. Bad Breaks is coming out September 2nd. That's already been queued up and posted. And we'll continue to bring out the songs one at a time over the next sort of month and a half. Now, once that's completed and we create the album, the plan is as well as, back to my teenage roots of getting the CD and pulling out the artwork and looking through all the lyrics, and that was what's again so important. I've never been more disappointed than pulling out a CD cover and not having lyrics in it.
Mm.
It's the worst feeling. But that sort of thing doesn't exist in the world anymore, and people still listen to CDs and vinyls, and they still in their own little pockets. Um, but what's going to come across with that album being released in its entirety is, the accompanying poetry book, so to speak, which will have the lyrics for what's in there, but reimagined in their way of, as they were as poems, as opposed to what we did to extrapolate them into the songs. But also some other ones then that have been written and we've recorded songs with them before, but just or maybe not, and just to put out there that we're not planning to use later, or maybe we will, but it'll be a more extensive poetry book than the album, so to speak.
Well, so there will be a book and an album.
Yeah,
Um,
two
uh,
separate.
two separate things. Okay, but
Yeah.
the book is going to just be the lyrics of the
Yeah, well, as I say, all the songs you're going to hear, they are broken up into verse, chorus, mostly, and there's a little more crazy than that sometimes, but they all came from a raw poem that didn't have that structure. Um, when I write, it might come across with Adequate that you've heard at least, when I write out a poem, it's not it's never structured in the way that you'd expect it to be, and more importantly, it's a paragraph of what it's a conversation. It's getting the words out there, and there's no line breaks. There's no this is where this line ends and the next line starts. It's really just a paragraph, and punctuated correctly, but but a paragraph of speech. When I did study drama in university. And he's not a poet, but an absolute wordsmith that, I fell in love with. There's a guy called Neil Dubutte. He's still going to this day. He's an American playwright, and he's done a couple of films as well. But um, his writing style is so perfectly conversational to a degree that I can't. I've tried to write plays and got a little daunted by it a couple of times, because it's really getting that conversational piece right without it sounding too clunky or too, unreal. It's a beautiful writing style. It's beautiful to perform as an actor. It's really you can really be part of that character because there's a real connection to that style.
yeah,
Um, and I really vibe with that. It's that sort of, can this be real? It's
yeah,
not just a piece. It's not performative. It's just really what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it.
lovely. Yeah. So will the album only available in physical form, or will it be available on Spotify?
Oh, I mean, Adequate and everything's already out there in Spotify right now and everywhere, anywhere you can get music, it's there. Um, and the rest will be as well. There will be a physical album that will be available for purchase, but it's not. We're not going to worry about that too much. Maybe we'll sell that, at gigs and festivals. But
Yeah.
I will be, because I'm curating this poetry book that accompanies it. Um, I'll be pushing that harder as a physical copy. But there probably will be a PDF available as well.
Very good. So I suppose that was going to be my next question. Maybe you've already answered it. Are you yourself and Niall going to be going back to festivals, going back to gigs, performing?
That's the plan, and we have this half of this last, this 2025, this last half year now. We're going to be in the studio and we're going to be working on things and we're going to be, not just creating the music, but also what it sounds like when we perform it live, and what we want to do there and what other aspects of that we want to achieve. But come next year's festival circuit, we'll be sticking our hand in the ring for them a few times as well, all over Ireland, the UK probably as well, and some international ones. My wife's from Virginia in America. Um, and we go back pretty often as well, so I might be able to cram one and then on a family
Oh
trip.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, yeah, they say the Americans love the Irish, so you might be
Let's
lucky.
see if they handle it yet.
Um, it's a shame now as well that festival that was always in Donegal, Sea Sessions, that fell through, didn't it?
C Sessions was great in Bundoran.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think they're doing it anymore now. I think it's scrapped,
But
isn't
C
it?
Sessions was on this year, I'm pretty certain.
Um,
I didn't go now, so my sister said she was going to go, but maybe I've lost it then.
I heard now they were done with it or something. There was some
Ah,
thing with
maybe
them.
maybe I'm thinking of the Gallagher Festival that she was going to instead.
Yeah,
That's
well,
that's, that's down there as
I'll
well.
double check that after anyway. But yeah, yeah, no, it is. And it's interesting. It seems that spoken word albums they're on the rise lately. I don't know if you've noticed
Oh,
this.
I've
If
been
you,
listening to it all, but I haven't heard the chatter.
yeah, like we had like Dara Fleming with he came out with it. I don't know if you know Dara Fleming. He came out
I
with
do.
a track there called Peddling. And I think who else is yeah, very loads of people I know that it's becoming way more popular now. So I think you're coming in at the right time with this
Getting ready for it.
getting ready for the next wave. Yeah, even now, oh, I think Annie Peter as well. She has a band. It's kind of like a post-punk spoken word group called Annie and
I
the
like that
Witness,
a
and
lot.
it's just yeah, it's groovy, And I suppose the beauty is like you might like you say have that hunger for wordplay and like expression with words, but maybe not being able to sing. So I think it is some people have the may not be able to sing, but have that ability to still captivate. Um,
Yes.
and I think that's where Dusk Til Chorus will come in. Hopefully. Um,
Fingers crossed, yeah.
what? Sorry, I never got the name. What is the name of the new album, by the way? And how many tracks are going to be on it? Actually,
Right now, it's a seven-track album. Now that might grow exponentially as we continue to record, But the album's going to be called Something About. Um, and there's a little bit of background to that, and a lot of it is what I consider to be a failure on my part. Um, there's a few poems and songs that I've written over the years that I get very in my head at the end and I'm unable to title. Um, so I can have a title that's simple and provides the information, so to speak, that sort of draws you in. I can have a clever, witty title, or is that too try hard? Is that too much going the opposite direction? And I always get in my head about titles. Adequate was an easy one. That was it done. Um, Especially with the word adequate being adequate. It was perfect for that. But there's one, and I can read for you as well, the original poem from it if you'd like on this now. But there's one called Something About Beats and Breath. And that was really the first one. It was a poem I wrote about my first son when he was born.
okay.
Um, and I couldn't, I was like the title I wanted a title that had something to do with beats and breath, something about beats and breath. And Niall got so annoyed at me for so long for without a title that he continued to call it something about beats and breath, and that stuck. And there's been a few more since then that we've sort of stuck to that sort of mantra. There's one called something about maybe later. There's something about this, something about that. So the book is something about, and um, it's really just going to be because it is a collection of different thoughts and feelings and ideas, and it's all very personal. You know, I have a great love for quite a lot of poetry, especially comes out of Ireland. You know, that's quite political, or it's quite, you know, it has an overarching message that's spurring the person on to do something else, or to sway somebody towards their point of view. You know, and it's a beautiful art form in its own right. But what I really like to create is something that I want people to relate to. I want people to think they're actually listening to me, have a conversation with them. You know, it's not it's not you know, listen to my poetry and tell me it's good. It's, you know, let's talk about your feelings through my feelings. You know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I
It's
get
sort of, I
that.
wanted to invite that response as opposed to, you
Yeah,
know, telling somebody.
exactly. Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, beats something about beats and breaths. Is that what
That's it,
you
yeah.
said? Well, if you, yeah, I mean, if you'd like, we'd love to hear it if you would like to perform it, or is yeah,
I'll go ahead, yeah, no problem at all. It's again, this is an old enough one. It's called something about beats and breath. My oldest son's 14 now, so that's how old this one is. But here we go. His breath's in double time to mine, half time to my heartbeat. He's already nearly half my size and already is steadying on his feet. The heat of his face, this lying on my chest, reminds me that the rest of my life could be as blessed as right now. It never had been before. Drinking and smoking gave me nothing but the floor. I needed more, more to live for, more reason to achieve, even just to be a better person and believe that no matter what he decides to do as he grows up, he'll always have someone there to tell him to wise up. As long as he has enough money, as long as he's happy. Life's kind of funny like that, but in a sad way, you see, everyone grows up just wanting to be a star, wanting to be a doctor or an astronaut and wanting to go far, but they don't realize till it's too late that the things that keep you sane are the things you can't put a price on. And well, pain, everyone loses heart. What matters is you find it again and restart. There's nothing worse than losing motivation. Domination of demons in the brain can add up the shame and the blame and slowly make you go insane. His breath's getting closer to mine. He's already grown up. And I wish I'd listened to my dad telling me to wise up. I may not have enough money, I've got enough to be happy, and I find everything funny, and rarely in a sad way, but I grew up, I wanted to be a star. I wanted to be in the spotlight, and I wanted it hard. And although arts will always keep a place in my heart, I wanted multiple hearts beating, a family for this gentle heathen. I'll never give up. Nothing will stop me or still my motivation. Fascination might test me, but I'll try to be the best me. Second guess me, and I'll show, well, that I've grown.
wonderful. It's really you get really drawn in with the story and the I wish I could imagine it on stage as well, you know. And there's not many spoken word artists up in Donegal, is there?
Not a while lot, no, not that I've come across. There's a good couple around Derry,
Yeah,
that I'd see and be friendly with, you know. Um, and there's a couple of little, you know, poetry workshops and poetry communities, you know, um, but especially in the Derry Donegal area, and this is their reality, and this is their, you know,
yeah,
what they feel and what they want to get out. But there's quite a lot of poetry regarding the Troubles and regarding, you know, that sort of that era of Ireland, which, you know, some of it's beautiful and some of it's, you know, incredible. But I find myself not being able to relate as much. You know, I came up and, you know, not exactly. I came up at the tail end of the Troubles, you know, and
yeah,
I was blessed not to really have been affected by any of that.
yeah.
But you know, so it's hard for me to, you know, to really engross myself into that sort of side of things. I feel almost performative doing that. Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, I suppose you have to come from your own experience, and that's what you're doing there. And
Exactly.
I think
And
it's
that's
actually
what they're
very,
doing too, you know.
yeah, I think it's actually very fitting as well. That quite touching actually. I suppose you're right about your son. And I suppose that's what you like. It's kind of nearly a confliction in a way because it's clear that you're very passionate about your art and spoken word, but the fact that you actually pulled away for 10 years to focus
Mhm.
on raising your children, that's incredibly brave. I think. Like I sometimes think I now I don't have any children at the moment. Hopefully someday I will. I will. But one of my sort of fears is that because I love obviously I love poetry, I love writing, I love but it's very time consuming. It's very
It
you
is.
nearly have to kind of give it everything, and you nearly like if you look at for example it reminds me of Stephen King a bit. I remember reading about Stephen King. He doesn't even remember writing The Shining and Misery because he was so out of his head on drugs, and he was just typing on the typewriter. And his wife came in with the two kids, and he was doing so much cocaine that he actually had tissue shoved up his nose because he was just bleeding on the manuscript. And the wife walked in with the two kids and was like, "Look, Stephen, I'm leaving." And he was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, okay, that's fine." And
See you later.
like she left, and he says, "Right, look, I'm gonna get this book done. I'm gonna get my wife back. I'm gonna get my family back, and I'm gonna stay off drugs." And but it just shows that there's the artist who is so consumed with his art, he doesn't care about anything else. And then
Yes.
there's
I'm very guilty of that as a person, and at this point in my life, my kids, my youngest is 9, he just turned 9, so it's not like they're all grown.
yeah,
Um, but you know, I'm able to sort of piece out my life in certain ways. I do a lot of my writing at night now, and I'm blessed that I've worked from home for about 6 or 7 years. Um, and I have that sort of that time and freedom that I can sort of connect, when I'm at home. I have to make myself do that. But and other times, a lot of writing that I did, 15, 20 years ago even was always in unfamiliar places. It's where I got that sort of feeling of dread or that feeling of, oh, am I going to be liked or whatever, stupid anxiety things that come into your brain, and it always dealt with it with just stupid words in my head, So I'd start, writing on my phone or, I have a little notebook that I'd write down sort of quietly or go to the bathroom and sit for 5 minutes and write something down that I wanted to write. Just, as almost a coping mechanism. Everybody will tell you I'm quite an outgoing person, and I don't have that sort of anxiety, and that's true to a large extent. But everybody has that sort of that little thing that they work with and how they work with, and that's just what mine was always. Like spooning words is one of my favorite things that I do with the kids a lot. Just taking the first letter of the word and swapping it with the next word.
uh,
Um, and it's so silly and so stupid, but it's instantaneous in your head that you can really just flip around and think about the silly of it, even if it makes no sense. It's just the silliness of it that really that grounds you in some way, at least for me.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Um,
Speaking of silliness, just because you mentioned Stephen King, apologies.
oh, yeah.
His wife also threatened to leave him because he wouldn't stop listening to Mambo Number Five. Did you know about that?
I didn't know that. Is that real? That's
For
crazy.
look it up, yeah. I only read this recently, but apparently he became obsessed with that song, and he was listening to it on repeat to the extent that his wife was like, "I can't do this anymore."
Yeah, he seems to have sort of an obsessive way about him. But I suppose because I mean he writes like 3 books a year.
Exactly. That's not healthy, and they're good. That's the worst part.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's more power to him. More power to him.
Exactly.
Um, well, look, we're probably going to wrap up soon. But I suppose just to remind people, the album something about. So when is it going to be released? And
We haven't got a firm date on the album launches yet. It'll be November time, I imagine. Um, but if you follow us on our socials, you just look for Dusk Til Chorus wherever you want to find that, and we'll be there, And if we're not, tell me.
we'll do. We'll do. Well, look, this hopefully people will come across it here. And I suppose as well, you have some of the tracks already on Spotify and YouTube as well.
Correct, yeah.
So
It's all out there.
they
And there'll
can
continue to be more as time goes on as well over the
absolutely.
weeks.
Well, look, here's to the revival of Dusk Till Chorus, and hopefully it's the dawn now of Dusk Till Chorus.
Dawn of Dusk Til Chorus,
Dawn of
exactly.
Dusk Till Chorus. Um, and who knows, maybe Dramatic Tiger Club will make could revive it
A
in another
cameo.
few years. I think actually I was looking at your channel art. Am I right in saying were those tigers in the
They
channel?
are, yeah. A little
Oh yeah, so
callback.
that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's cool. Well, look, at least they're there. The tigers are there in some way. They're still
Yeah,
present.
we still haven't strayed too far from what I've always been doing, as a duo, as a project.
Yeah, and Niall, where's Niall today? He's
Hopefully Niall's in bed. For his sake, I mean, more than anything else. He's a very busy man. And he recently bought a house down in Fermanagh. Um, that he's it's to fix up. It's doesn't have running water, doesn't have electricity yet. Um, and he's got that on the go. He's out working, away, in Belfast or Dublin for weeks at a time. and beyond that as well. But he was at a wedding abroad this past week, so he really needs to sleep. I'm hoping he does take that opportunity today.
Jeez, no water, no electricity. Sounds like he's living the true poet life anyway.
Well, no, he's not living there at the minute. He's fixing it up until he
All
gets
right.
there, you know. But
Okay.
that's the shell that it is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Thank God. Thank God. Well, look, Nathan, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast and
Absolutely a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
sharing your work. And yeah, absolutely, guys. Follow Nathan and Niall as well, and subscribe to their channel. Check out their socials and check in with their work on Spotify, YouTube, and yeah, who knows? We might see it at a festival now or two in the
I'd
near
love that.
future. All going well. Yeah. Well, look,
You're
absolutely.
lovely. Thanks again.
Thanks for coming on, and we'll chat to you soon.
Have a good one.